All
I had
right.
to do
Sorry.
something to fill the
Go ahead.
space. I had to do something to fill the space waiting on you to get ready.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being the DJ at the concert there for me. I appreciate it. All right. Welcome back. Wow, it's been a long, long, long time here. A lot of work going on our end, trying to get things ready. I'm just going to keep being the man at the gate here and letting people in. Look like we're going to have some stragglers show up. 1 second here.
You have a co-host helping you with this?
No. No,
Anne's
I
not
do
here today.
not. I'm a one-man show over here, man. All right, so here we are. We are going to start up with lab number 22 in the series. And today we are going to discuss this whole concept of bus-to-bus workflows, right? I was chatting with a couple of you before it's going on the air here, and a few of you guys have been working with this already. This is kind of a unique thing to digital consoles. I mean, this kind of thing really, for the most part, did not really exist in analog. Certainly not to the level you can do it in digital. And we recently, I say recently, last year, introduced it into the S6L world, and it is really, really a great thing to have. Especially with some other elements surrounding it in the console. It's one of those deals, I don't think I have to tell anybody who's used it, you can get deeply into the weeds here with it really, really quickly. And that it was part of my agenda for putting a lab together on it. And I fully admit I went into it and underestimated it a little bit. I thought, I should be able to cover that in one lab. I think by the time it's all said and done, by the time we talk about, use cases and manual and automatic delay compensation, doing it at front of house, doing front of house and monitors, doing monitors. I think this is going to be 2 or 3 labs probably by the time we're all said and done with it. So we'll see how it goes here today. All right, so just since we've been away for a while, just some reminders. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. Hopefully I'll see that. I get pretty distracted here. I don't have any help in the background. You're welcome to just break in and ask your question if you want to do it. We can spend some time with it. There is no time limit on these labs. We just do this until we think everybody's got it. So, that's kind of the nice idea here. So feel free to break in with a question if you need to, if we want to tunnel down on something, if I stumble over something, even if you want to come up and say, dude, you are so wrong on that. Let me tell you why. So we'll take it from there. Okay, so let's get going here. All right, here's what we're going to cover today. We are going to preview what I call tiers. We're going to look at multiple tiers of audio subgrouping, right? So we want to, the idea is group to group to group. Well, that's going to be one of the workflows we're going to look at for sure. We're going to demonstrate some challenges for effects processing as well as multing for sure. There is definitely some challenges with regard to coherency and time alignment, making sure all of your signals are coherent by the time they hit the master bus, and groups put in some challenges there. Going to group, put some challenges in place, especially when you're doing effects processing, and most certainly when you're doing mult processing. Does everybody understand what I mean when I say mult? Is that a common term for everybody? So
Yes.
I'll just briefly give you the Reader's Digest version of it. So a mult is your original signal, and then another identical signal, added with it that is usually post fader, but is for things like adding distortion or color or something else. It's not time-based processing in that return, right? Those things should be in equal time in order to create good phase addition for them, and that is a challenge in digital consoles for sure. Put group to group in there as well, it becomes even a bigger challenge. We're going to talk about some aux bus to bus assignments, group to aux to group, etc., and how this can actually affect the way we do effects returns. This is actually, I think, from a front of house perspective, one of those golden things that comes from bus to bus. So we'll dig in on that when we get there with it. So let's set a few ground rules before we get too far into it. I'm going to give you my definition of these tiers. You're not going to find this in any textbook or anything like this. This is just my way, my language that I've come up with here to try to communicate this, certainly within the walls of Avid when we're talking in development groups, et cetera, about what we're doing. It gives us some language to talk about what element or what area of the signal flow we're talking about, right? So what I call a tier 1 group is what I define as an input group, right? Where you can take multiple inputs. Maybe you got 2 or 3 different kick drums, 2 or 3 different snare drums, and group them into one fader, right? So it's an input group. It's a group of inputs, right? And then that input that group can go on to other groups, or it can go straight to the left, right master, whatever. But the console sees it as essentially an input, not as a group when it is tier 1 like this. When we get to tier 2, then we are talking about subgroups, right? And you're going to have like families of inputs in a subgroup, meaning all drums, all guitars, all keys, etc., that kind of thing. And it can have a combination of inputs and input groups, right? So we could have just some raw inputs along with the input groups we've created, add those together, add a subgroup, and then pass it on down the line. So that's kind of the two choices or two terms I use, I should say, input groups and subgroups, tier 1 to tier 2. When we get to tier 3, now we're talking about subgroup masters, right? Subgroup masters, meaning I'm going to take those subgroups, drums, keys, guitars, etc., and sum them down again into a single group. It is a master of subgroups, right? And we're going to sum it together one more time. So input groups is tier 1, subgroups tier 2, subgroup masters tier 3, and then there's even a tier 4, right? So tier 4 is the grand master, meaning we're going to go input groups to a subgroup, subgroup to subgroup masters, and then have it all trail down to a grandmaster. In our case, it's usually the left-right bus, but it could be a matrix. It could be something like that if we want to do it as well. Okay? Is that making sense to everybody? That kind of reading okay for everybody?
I would suggest that we understand why we're breaking it down into all 4 of those groups. Hopefully you're going to see that here coming up. The main thing I want you to grab here is that when I say input groups, I'm talking about tier 1. When I say subgroup masters, I'm talking about tier 3. Okay, so you'll see it as we go along here, Michael. It gets all drawn out in front of you here. Just kind of trying to define some terms there. All right, so let's start out with something really, really simple. So we're going to take a number of inputs, and because there's the biggest opportunity for input grouping here, we're going to concentrate primarily on a drum kit and then other inputs, right? So the drum kit plus the other inputs, whenever you see other inputs, that can be the rest of the console if you want it to be. But right now, just for size reasons and being able to demonstrate it properly, we're just going to call them, we're just going to concentrate on the drum set right now, okay? So right now we have all inputs. Wow, I just got louder. Did I just get louder for everybody else? Oh boy, that's okay. It's first day, first show. We'll get it figured out.
Better level for me.
Okay, well that's good. It actually sounds better in my ears too. So in this situation, we're going to in this situation, we're going to just assign everything to the left-right bus, right? This is not uncommon. You would see this in all kinds of situations where you might have a set of inputs. All your drums are going to the left-right, but yet all of your other inputs are going to the left-right too. And traditionally, we've kind of looked at, many of us anyway, have looked at grouping here as being done with VCAs, right? So in a VCA scenario, we might take some of those inputs, maybe like you see here, I got a kick in, kick out, and a sub kick, and then a snare bottom, snare top, and a snare trigger. We might assign each one of those, each set of those 3 to their own VCA, right? So we've created a control group there, right? Now, absolutely nothing wrong with doing this. If you want to be able to collapse inputs down into VCAs to save faders on your console, we do it all the time. The challenge becomes that it's only a control group and it only controls one thing, and that is fader level, right? There's no ability to sum here. There's no ability to process here. There's no ability to even see level, no ability to even see aggregate level here on these groups. Now, this is still very effective. You can still do this sort of things, but it has its limitations, right, in terms of trying to create bus to bus. We would have to use this in addition to bus, right? So let's go to subgroups now. Let's create a set of input groups, a set of tier 1 input groups. All right. So as you can see here, we've taken the kick in, kick out, sub kick, and assigned those to one audio subgroup. And then the same thing with the snare top, snare bottom, snare trigger, assigned that to one snare or one tier one subgroup, an input group, calling it snare drums, and then the same thing for the toms, right? So let me kind of get some other visual support up here. Let's do this. So if we take a look overhead here, maybe let's do it this way. So if you look overhead here, here are all of those drum inputs, right? Sitting in a row. And here is our other input. So I'm going to try to represent this PowerPoint actually on the console here, right? So if we go now to a group or a tier one group, notice we can collapse a lot of that down, right? The ones in orange here are the groups that you see there. This is the additional input. So there's my cymbals, hi-hat, overhead, and all other inputs. And then here's my kick drum, snare drum, and tom-toms, all in one stereo audio group, right? So I have the ability to process this. These are going to get sent on directly to the left-right bus, as you see up above. If I need to get to the things that are in here, if you have a spill feature on your console, I can just spill them out, and here are the kick drum channels that are assigned to it. Same thing with the snare drum. I can just go out and get the snare, go do equalization on it, whatever I need to do in the single channel. But if I come out of it, I also have that possibility here, right? So now I have, this is my composite of the kick drums, and I have the ability to do equalization, compression, whatever I want to do on that. And in addition, which we're going to talk about going forward, I have the ability with that group to send it to auxes, right? I can send it up to effects processing, whatever I want to do from there, right? So you can see on a digital console, you can go from that many, top level channels possibly needed to that and be able to get to it very quickly. You can condense it down very quickly using group to group, right? Is that making sense for everybody? Now, I'm going to reiterate this throughout the process here. You have to be always aware of what you're doing in terms of the time relation between these inputs and groups that you're combining at the master bus, right, at the left-right bus. I mean, in a typical scenario, it would be easy to look at this and say, well, hang on a second. Aren't those inputs that are going to the left-right bus getting there faster than the ones going through the group? And I'm sure in many consoles it is that way. In Venue right now, certainly in S6L, we actually have this portion of it already aligned. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on ADC and manual delay compensation today. The next lab I do is going to be on parallel compression and inserts, so that will really kick this into play. But it doesn't mean you don't want to discount it here. It absolutely is in play here. So if we were to take a look, for instance, at this, 1 second for me. Let me just mute this up for a second. And we'll bring this into play. So you can see on the Smart there that this is actually coherent, right? Even with no delay compensation or anything on right now, there's enough buffer in the S6L to handle this workflow without delay compensation, right? So you could do groups to, or inputs to groups, inputs directly to the left, right, and that comes out in phase, all right? Now, a reminder, we have no insert plugins in play right now. This is just signal taking the group paths to the master bus, right? As soon as we put inserts in play, all kinds of other stuff, then and parallel compressions, then this gets very tricky to do and keep it coherent. But in its base form, this is actually in phase in S6L, all right? You'll just have to check your own console. I cannot speak for the other consoles. I have not done enough research on them to know, okay? All right, so let's go back to this now. Let's carry on here. And we're going to go to tier 2 grouping now, right? So let me get this up. Oops. All right, so now in tier 2 grouping, look what we have, right? We have our inputs going to our input groups, and all of those input groups, meaning kick drums, snare drums, toms, and the cymbals, etc., go up to the drum submaster and then are added with all of the other inputs, right? Everybody seeing that okay? Right, so again, that kind of condenses things down where we have a set of input groups here that are going to travel all the way down to a drum subgroup and then get added to the left-right master, right? So if we turn those down, we can see that, oops, I got that all in another group. Hang on, I got to check myself here on something. Oh, right. Yes, that's right, because that goes to, that should go to drum group. Stand by, I got to make a mistake here, sorry. Didn't think that looked right.
Robert, while you're there,
Yeah.
when you check your snare subgroup, I think there was only 2 channels going to it, but you wrote 3 channels because you wrote top snare, bottom snare, and trigger, and I only saw 2 when you were doing your snare group.
Yeah, on the actual console, I don't have the trigger channels in.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, apologies. Nice catch though. Yeah.
No, no problem.
You get extra points for paying attention today. That's good. All right, so let's see here. All right, so here's a good example of where it can get tricky now. So let me get the smart back up. Okay, so you can see I've got the other channels and the overhead and hi-hat muted here, right? Now remember, the change here is that the overhead and hi-hat are going to the drum submaster now, right? Or the drum subgroup. We have the input groups plus the cymbals, etc., going to another subgroup. Yet the other channel, the other inputs, are going directly to the left-right, all right? So here's, again, how easy it is to kind of get things out of whack. This is not compensated for in the console without delay compensation on. You can do this manually or with audio ADC, but this is not compensated for. And you'll see as I turn on the overhead and the hi-hats, you can see you start to get some phase shift in it. And then if I turn on the other channels, again, more phase shift. And that's just these channels being late to the left-right. Check. Okay. All right, is everybody grasping that concept there?
Kate Lee, your mic is open.
Yeah, I'm muting it, so stand by. Everybody grabbing that? Okay, so, if you want to fix this, obviously you can turn on delay compensation in your console if you have it, right? And there you go. So now you can see all channels are on and we're all back in phase. So S6L has compensation that can do that. If you don't have delay compensation, you can use input delay on these other inputs to do the same thing, right? So if I go here, I think I've got this set up to do this, and put in some delay, I can get it back to in phase. Right? Okay, so really, I bring this up for no point other than to say, be careful, right? Please don't treat it like an analog mindset here where you just start going group to group to group to group and think everything's going to be okay. You're going to start chopping away at the impulse of your mix as you do this if you don't take care of the time domain in this process. And remember, we have no external inputs or inserts inserted right now, nothing like that. We have no parallel compressions in play yet. So, and it can still happen here. So you want to be careful. I know without delay compensation on it, and there are consoles out there that don't have any delay compensation on it. This is a real deal. You need to pay attention to this, okay? I mean, if you want to be a good audio guy. Anyway. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Back over here. All right, so let's go take a look at just kind of an example of what you need to do here. I'm sorry, I forgot my own slide here. If you look down in the lower left-hand corner there, I'm indicating that you need time on those extra inputs that are taking a path outside of those input group paths, outside of a tier 1 path, right? So that either needs to be manually compensated or automatic delay compensation if your console will handle that. All right. Now you might be inclined to think, okay, well maybe I should just do add some groups here, so I don't have to worry about the time element of it, right? But here's the thing, if you add the groups to the symbol path, then you take care of the symbol path. I think I actually have that here. Let me make sure I have it patched right. Yeah. So if you add that group to the symbol path, just as a pass-through group to get it in time with the other inputs, that will get that path in phase. But if you just add a second subgroup to the other instrument paths, that's not going to cut it. That's not enough place to do it, right? And again, that would get really complicated if you had a lot of inserts in play here and didn't have it compensated. You'd have to really be careful there. So my reason for putting the circle with the slash through it there is to say, hey, be careful. This is not enough to take care of this problem. You always want to check this. But there's nothing wrong with creating that symbols group as a pass-through if you want to do it. It's just another path to create some time. I think personally I would probably do it at the input delay and take care of it, but you could do it here. All right, let's move on. All right, so let's get to the Mac Daddy here, right? So this is kind of where we're heading with all of this. So this is, let me get on the right snapshot here. I believe this is it. Right, so just to explain the slide, you have a set of kick inputs that are going down to a input group for kick drums. You have all of those drum groups going to the drum submaster. And then you're going to have your instruments, all of your instrument groups, meaning your drums, your bass, guitars, keys, DAWs even if you wanted to do that, heading to an instrument group master, subgroup master, right? So now you have one fader that represents the entire music bed in your mix, right? And then on top of it, you have vocals that are going to go to a vocal submaster, and then had that head out to a vocal group master that both are summed together and head to a grandmaster. All right, just put your eyes on that for a minute. Make sure you understand that workflow or that signal path there, right? And remember that, as you'll see in the next lab, really, the key to doing this, the reason for doing a lot of this is so that you can process as groups. So, if I wanted to process the kick drum path as a whole, I can do it here, right? I can put plug-in processing or even just channel strip processing on that kick drum's input group and go to work on it, right? And if you use the input strip, there's no penalty in terms of time there. If you start putting inserts on there, external DSP inserts on there, then you're going to have some way to manage the time offset that it creates. Okay, and then the same thing at the subgroup level, where you could also process, equalize, whatever you need to do, the drum submaster as a composite, and then have all of it go together to the music in an instrument group, and if you wanted to, equalize, compress, whatever you want to do at that instrument group before it goes to a left-right master, right? So the key element of this, or the key appetite, I should say, for this, is being able to process differently at different stages, right? Is there a need to do this? I don't know. You tell me. Would I process at every stage of that? I probably would not, but that doesn't mean you won't. But what we need to understand is that all of this, we have time offsets that are going to be created in all of this as well, and we got to pay really, really close attention to it. But that said, this is absolutely possible. We can do that. I have it set up on the console here, so let's take a look at that. Stand by. My world together here. Have I got noise coming in there? I've got some lingering delay here from one of my previous slides. Stand by. Yeah, here we go. All right. Okay, so as you can see here, I have a set of other inputs representing all inputs outside of drums. I have some vocals here. This is all of my drums in the drum groups, right? The drum input groups, going to a drum submaster, going to a music groups master, going to the left-right bus. So let me turn off everything except that. That way we'll keep it play here. All right, so drums to the group, right? Group to the music master to the grandmaster. Okay, everybody got that? And as you can see, that is all in phase there. Pretty cool. All right, so now as we add the vocal path to it, what we should see is the same thing. Now I've got delay compensation on here, okay? If I turn delay compensation off, I would have to delay that path to get it in time, or I would do it, I know that, to get it in time with the others, right? Same sort of thing for these other paths. You can see where it's gonna, we might get a little, no, it's not gonna do it, it's good. But if I turn off the delay compensation, you can see it gets a little squirrely here. All right. Thoughts, ideas? You think you would use it? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to monitor the chat here as well. Christina, I'll address your question there. So I'll just read it if you don't mind. Input delay refers to time added to individual channels or groups. Yes? I'll stop you there and say, let's take groups out of the conversation for a second. Yes, input delay has to do with channel delay. It's the channel or delay right at the top of your system. But I will warn you ahead of time. I know it's this way in SXL. I don't know about other consoles. Depending on what tier the group is, you may have access to the delay for the group, you may not, right? I know in our situation, when you're at least, I think you have to be at least at tier 2. Like once you implement tier 2, you can implement delay at that group level. If it's only tier 1, you can implement delay there. But once you implement tier 1 and tier 2, it's going to eliminate one of those paths for delay, all right? Confuses the delay compensation if you do it. So again, you know, you guys have heard me say this till I'm blue in the face. If you haven't got a way to do FFT analysis on your consoles yet and be able to look at these path links, man, you are really selling yourself short. You've got to get your life together here and get on one of these FFT programs to be able to start analyzing this on your console. Because it's one of those things, you know, it's an old adage, right? You can pay me now or pay me later. You can do all this ahead of time, or you can try to do it on show day. I know which path I'm going to take there. I'm always going to try to understand this on my console ahead of time. And if I don't understand it, I'm probably not going to do it on show day. You know, I'm going to avoid the risk. Okay. So any questions there? Before we move on to the next segment here, I want to make sure you guys are all okay with this concept and
yeah, Robert,
really getting you here.
Yeah, Robert, you say you do this in advance, but you would do this with your virtual sound check. Other than virtual sound check, how else would you do it?
I'm just doing it with pink noise right now. So, just running pink noise into channels, checking their path lengths through output. So you don't even need to be virtual sound check here, necessarily. You can just run pink noise into your channels. As you can see here, this is all just noise here. This is not audio level. We are going to listen to some audio here in a few minutes, though, when we start talking about some of the processing. Okay? That makes sense for you, Dennis? And really, look, I'm not blind to the idea that, hey, we're going to have to walk in on consoles at times and go to work. What I'm really trying to avoid you doing here is walking in blind on a console and just making an assumption that I'm just going to do all this bus-to-bus thing and everything's going to be fine. It's probably not. And it really just is down to how much your ears are willing to tolerate. How much phase shift your ears are willing to tolerate when you incorporate this kind of stuff. I know guys out there working in the world today, top level guys, who just say, I don't care about any of this. I'm just going to group it up and send it. I'm just going to keep doing it until I get it to sound good. It's like, okay, if that's how you want to work, peace be with you. That's not me. Sorry. Justin, you're asking about forced align channel there. We will not discuss it today. If I find a way to squeeze that in without it really confusing the conversation in the next lab, I will, okay? Because I've actually had some epiphanies on that whole concept as well, that I think we may not need to rely on it as much as we have in the past. So, but don't hold me to that till I get to the next lab, okay? All right, so are you guys ready to move on here? Are we okay with moving ahead? Last chance for questions? It's not last chance. You can reach out to me anytime. Okay, so let's take a look at, actually I forgot my little slide automation again. If you're going to do this and you want it to be in time and you want to do it manually, then you have to do delay at that tier 2 level, right? This is kind of what we were talking about there, whether you're going to do input delay or not. In this situation, and reminder, we don't have any input inserts in that path right now, but in this simple configuration, you could put that delay on the vocal submaster and get it in alignment with those other master or subgroups as well. Okay.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, honestly. Well, it would matter here if you had inserts, DSP inserts on those inputs that were feeding that group, because those would not be in alignment. I'm talking about a manual delay compensation.
Well, I mean, does it matter where? As long as you have gotten the signal to be the same, leaving the console at the same time as everything else, doesn't matter where you actually do the delay compensation.
In my mind, no.
That's kind of where I was thinking too.
Yeah. All right, so let's carry on here. Let's see what we get next. All right, so let's talk about parallel returns here, because this is something that actually gets really kind of cool with what we can do in bus-to-bus now. Bus-to-bus opened up this whole world probably without us actually even realizing it. So, all right, so let's take a look here. So what happens if we have an effects return here? Let's go back to our original drawing, which was just everything assigned to the left-right. And, can we, what's the deal here? Well, we have effect or time problems here, et cetera, right? That's got to be the question. And the answer is yes, you will, but will it matter? That's the other part of the question. And for time-based processing, what we're going to see is that it as long as you're talking about delays, reverbs, maybe even pitch change a little bit, something that is going to separate itself from the source in terms of time, you can have an offset here and have it not be a big issue, right? So in this situation, we've got everything going to the left-right. We've got inputs that are going to go to an effects aux master, out to an effects processor, and return to a channel that is also going to go to the left-right bus, right? So let's take a look at what that looks like here. Let's see if I can do it. Who's got their mic open? If you have your mic open, please check.
Matt.
All right, so
let's see here. Let's make sure I'm right here. You know, you can rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. You still get here and mess it up. Oh, no, this is because I got delay compensation. Okay. There we go. All right, so let me get the smart back up here. All right, so what you're looking at right now is just the inputs going to the left-right bus. You can see that everything is in phase there. And now I'm going to turn on the effects return, right? So we're going to take that effects out to a plugin. I'm going to just put the plugin in bypass right now so that we're not seeing any of the effects processing and just look at the path coming back, right? And as you can see there, we get it late, right? It's the late arriving path there. And there's nothing we can do about this short of delay compensation right now, right? Automatic delay compensation. There's no path I can delay here to get this in time with its inputs. Everybody agree with that? Because the sources are all ahead of the return, right? I can't delay those or they're just going to make the return even later. Everybody buying it? Okay. But if we're talking about delays and reverbs, then no big deal, right? I'm going to put the processing back in play here, and you can see it's just reverberant, right? The phase is overall okay because those are late arriving elements to your mix anyway, reverb and delay, anything like that. Now, if this was not time-based, this becomes an issue, which we're going to discuss here. But if I'm in, you can see the impulse, how late it is there, all right? Now, like I said, there's nothing you can do manual delay compensation-wise to do this short of a bridge channel, which we'll talk about in a little bit if you want to do that. But if you have delay compensation, automatic delay compensation on your console, S6L does now, then I can take care of that thing, right? So now it's back in time. Matter of fact, I'll do this so you can see what's going on here. Man, it's a lot of screens to manage. All right, so plug-in is in bypass, so we're just sending signal out and returning it back and adding it. I'm going to turn off delay compensation now, and you can see that late arriving impulse there. Everybody got it?
Hey, Robert.
On
Yeah.
a show day, would you if it was a time-based effect, would you spend processing power in the engine to correct that?
If I had automatic delay compensation at my disposal, I would absolutely use it.
So it doesn't take up any extra resources to do that?
No.
No.
Not until we incorporate a bridge channel if we feel the need to do that. I don't feel there's the need to do that on reverbs and delays, right? On mults, yes, which we'll cover here going forward. But okay, so right now, with the delay back in line, you can see that the impulse is good.
Hey, the automatic delay compensation, is that an engine that's actually doing the math of the path?
Yeah.
Or is that something that's pre-programmed? Hey, if you have X, Y, and Z, this is how long that's going to take.
Well, it is kind of pre-programmed, because it's got to be able to anticipate a certain number of path combinations, right? But
Right.
it's doing it as you do it. Like as you add more and more path length, you'll see the length of your console get longer because it's having to create a bigger buffer, right?
But as yet, it's not taking the original path and the ending path and doing the math to figure out what that delay compensation needs to be.
No, it is doing that. Yeah, it is.
Oh.
It is absolutely doing that. Yeah. That's the only way it knows. It kind of internally kind of goes, that path is this long, this path is this long. This is how much delay I need to delay the entire console in order to get those paths in line.
Right on. Okay.
Right?
Better than I thought. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's actually we're so new to it in live sound in terms of this concept of delay compensation, and the more I play with it on the console, the more impressed I am with it. I just think of how many things it's actually solving. It's pretty impressive. All right. So if you want to see it in action, so here's our non-automatic delay compensated. I'm going to go ahead and turn delay compensation on here, and you can see it just now. You see it made the console longer, but it cleaned up the impulse, right? So that's reverb in bypass, that's reverb in play. You can see the reverb happening there. So going to have really good response there. Now the key to it here's where it does matter if you're not going to delay compensate time-based processing, reverbs and delays. What that also means is you can't use any dry signal here. This has to be 100% wet all the time. As you start to add dry signal into this, like if you were going to mix it on the plug-in, now you're going to bring in a signal that is out of phase with the source. You're going to hear flanging on it, honestly. Capiche? Everybody good there? All right, so what happens as we start adding tiers here now? Because obviously we got the effects processing added to the left-right bus right now, and S6L can compensate for that as we see here. But what happens if we move on past that? Right, let's go. Oops, actually I need to do this too. I was going to say, here's another piece of bus-to-bus that can work really good, right? Is that we can take any path now, be it an input, a group, an aux, and send it out an aux, right? So we can send anything to subwoofers now at any tier of the process, right? So if you were just working in submasters and you wanted to send your entire drum group to the subs, you could do it. Now you have that group to aux capability. If you wanted to create a kicks group, kick in, kick out, kick trigger, and send that on one knob to the subs, or process it maybe with a gate or a compressor before you send it to the subs, you could do that very easily now, right? So that part of it's handy. That part of it's really good. And for my money, I consider, even though there's no return path for the subs, the return path is our ears through air. That is definitely a latent path. It's a propagated path as well. So time alignment there really only matters for the sources, right? You need to just make sure that the sources are coherent before you send them out that aux that is going to the subs. All good? All right, so let's carry on here. All right, so let's go to the next one here, which is, tier 1 with effects here, right? Yeah. So in this situation, here's where we got to start paying a little bit of attention to how we feed these auxes, right? So in this situation, let me get the camera back up here. All right, so here in this situation, I've got it kind of laid out like it is on the screen. So I've got the 3 input groups, right? So I've got kick, snare, toms. I've got the cymbals, or I got the cymbals here, I should say. And I've got an effects return here now, right? And the question is, where do we derive signal to the effects processing? And where do we send the return now? Where's the best place to send it? Well, in this situation, you definitely want to feed the effects processor from the input groups, right? You don't want to do this from the input side, because then you're going to have basically pre-fader sends to that effects return, because they're going to be before your input group, right? You could turn off your input group and you would still have audio going to your effects processing. So, and it also plays well with any kind of time delay or any type of automatic delay compensation. Gets really screwy if you start sending audio from the input side here and not from the input group, right? This is part of the reason you're going to do an input group, is so that you can process it and send it somewhere as a composite, right? So in this situation, you're going to actually go group to aux, right? You're going to take the kick drums up to the effects processor, the snare drums up to the effects processor, and the toms up to the effects processor, right? You're conceding that you're going to create the blend that is going to go up there.
right? And then the effects return is still going to the left-right bus. It's not going to a group anywhere. There's no submaster involved. So the question is this in phase? And with delay compensation, it is. Without delay compensation, it's still okay, right? We can still have, because it's time-based processing, we can still do this and be okay, all right? So chew on that for a second. Make sure you're okay. All right, let's carry on. Let's go one more time here. All right, so now we've got our first, sorry, go ahead.
Is that because there is, yeah, see, the drum submaster in the chain as well, so it's equalizing that distance, that digital distance out.
Are you talking about this slide or the previous slide?
Well, I mean, I noticed that on the previous slide, the drum submaster wasn't there.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and now it is.
No, the reason it's there now is so that you can have one fader, one processing point for all of your drums now.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So in this situation, look at kind of what's changed here now. And really this kind of speaks to stem mentality, right? If we're going to create a set of stems and we're going to record it per se, or send it somewhere, maybe we're sending it to a festival truck or whatever, we want that group to be processed correctly, right? We want it, when it's processing, to be included with it. So it's drum submaster, all drum inputs plus drum processing, okay? So as you can see here, we're sending the input groups to the processor, and the processor returns and goes to the drum group, right? So that we create a stem that has, an accurate representation of the effects processing in there. Now, again, this works fine for time-based processing. If it was mult processing, it would not be in phase. We would have to address that a different way. Also note in that situation, remember, the symbols, etc. We need to time align there, either manually or with automatic delay compensation, because if we send those up to the effects processor, they will be out of time with the kick drum, the snare drum, or they will be time shifted, is what I should say, compared to those other inputs, right? So we want to make sure that they're coherent as early in the chain here as possible.
What if you don't want the symbols going through the effects processor?
Then don't turn them up in there. Yeah, that's totally okay. This is really just if you're going to, this is the implication, right? Yeah, you don't have to turn them up there by any stretch. That's the beauty of using the aux, right? Okay. Shall we go another? Shall we try another one? All right, let's go on down to tier 3 now. All right, so similar situation here. Really nothing has changed here. You're going to stick in your stem mentality. That effects return is going to go to the drum submaster, right? So that it's included as part of the stem. And then all of those quote unquote stems are going to be blended together into an instrument group, which is passed on, which is added with the vocal group and then passed on to a grandmaster. So I think you're probably all kind of maybe internally processing right now and saying, I don't know if I want to do this unless I'm really ready to do this. And I would encourage you to practice. I mean, if you think gain structure was an issue before, gain structure is 10 times the issue now. Okay, I mean, it can get out of whack. But remember, in the original gain structure labs we were talking about, we only ever had one tier of submasters involved, right? They were submasters. Here we're really upping our game here, big time. Okay.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Sorry to interrupt. One question, and this might sound convoluted, but if you would go and add a symbols input group, you would take away the need to put manual delay compensation on that input channel, correct?
Yeah, on any of those input channels that you would assign to that input group. Yeah.
And would be this more advisable than starting if you don't have access to FFT or would this be more advisable than try to calculate? I want to manually compensate this, so my impulse response is
it's the easiest answer. But again, what is going to trip up the whole game here is when you start doing DSP input inserts and you all start doing parallel compression, then all bets are off at that point, you know.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But in this simple context, yes, absolutely, you would be well within your rights to do that, and would probably be a good idea. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
I mean, you know, if you want to take that stance on it as well, I mean, if you're really just trying to do something this complex and say, I want to keep all my path links the same, again, divorcing input inserts out of this, then you could take all of your other inputs and run them through a submaster, actually run them through 2 submasters here, 3 submasters to get it to time align right. But you know, there are easier ways to do it, honestly. You know,
It can get convoluted. That's like the
Big
whole
time.
thing.
big time.
So,
Yeah.
you know, in my scenario, I never get to, very rarely I'm mixing where I have the time, or I have a console in my hand where this can happen.
Yeah.
And dabbling into subgroup mixing, if you are not aware of this, it's dangerous, I guess is the way to put it.
Well, I don't know if I could characterize it as dangerous. I mean, I've been promoting it now for decades, so I don't necessarily think it's dangerous. I like what it has to offer in terms of control and the ability to analyze mixes, et cetera. And still, to my line of thinking, I still believe this is the festival workflow, right? Where you're going to take those stems and send those to the truck and say, here's all the music, mix it as you feel fit. Here's your drums, here's your guitars, because it's going to contain all of your moves in it, and then have them add vocals to it, you know, in the truck. We did it that way on Petty for 15 years. It was just great success. But what it requires is those groups be, you know, all exiting the console at the same time, you know, so that you don't put any kind of time off shift into the truck, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Great question too. All right, as everybody kind of getting this now, the thing that if you don't implicitly understand, you need to understand here is the cardinal sin of all of this is mixing inputs into the wrong effects processor, right? So right now we have that effects processor being part of our drum sound, right? It is helping us create our drum sound, and it is part of our drum stem. The worst thing you could do with this in terms of time and level is take non-drum inputs and send it to this effects processor, right? Because now you're going to have vocal or guitar in that aux path that is going to your drum submaster, right? It's going to get out of whack. You're going to start to lose sight of what you got going on, right? So you want to be disciplined here, and you certainly have enough processing in digital now to be able to have dedicated processors for your families of instruments. You don't want to mix them up here. Okay.
Do you think there's any credence to? I mean, this stems from a few older recording gentlemen that I've had this conversation with, and they want, for example, the verb, you know, the same verb that you're using on the drums, they want to use that on the acoustic. They don't want to use that on the vocal, because to them, that's the glue that puts the whole thing together.
Yep. If you're trying to do that, then, I mean, in that situation, honestly, I probably wouldn't use subgroups. You know, I wouldn't do any grouping. I'd just go back to a left-right assignment in that situation. If everything's going to go to the same effects processor, then you make everything go to the same bus. Now, that said, and I've actually advised a couple of guys to do this in the past, and they have had fantastic results with it. If you were going to put all instrumentation into that effects processor, then I might take it up and drive it from the instrument group master.
That's where I was thinking of that possibility.
Yeah, if you're trying to take your music and put it in a space.
Yeah, I don't agree with that theory. You know, call me
well,
silly.
I'll tell you where I just advised somebody.
I want to do a little bit longer of a delay compensation, you know, on the input of my acoustic guitar reverb than I do on my drums.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go to the drums like a 1.8, where I want that acoustic guitar maybe at a 2.4.
You mean in terms of reverb time, not compensation?
Yeah, right. Reverb time. Sorry. And you know,
yeah, that's two different arguments for how to use reverb, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'll give you an example that I just suggested to somebody the other day who was really challenged with mixing in a ultra dry room. I mean, just a really, really dead down room. I said, dude, just take and create a parallel path for your reverb and send your entire mix to the reverb. You can even insert it on your mix bus and just blend back in 5-10% of that reverb to try to give you some spatial element to your mix in that room. And he wrote me back just absolutely raving about it. He was like, "It's the greatest idea I ever heard in my life." He said, "It works so good, I can't believe it." You know.
Well,
But that's a very specific instance of it, you know.
You can use the verb to do the exact opposite. If you have a horribly reverberant room and you're fighting to get some clarity, you can always run a verb, run everything through a verb that way to get a cancellation and get that clarity back.
Yeah, I don't know if I can go there with you. Somebody'd have to show me that and prove that works. Because that room imprint that you're going to deliver to the room has to be the same acoustic footprint as the actual room for that to even remotely happen. So, yeah, I'm not sure I buy that, but I'm open to all suggestions there.
I've seen it. I've experienced it.
Okay, well, let's carry on here with some more effects processing concepts here. This is where it gets really kind of cool in my mind. So we're going to talk about some different concepts for parallel here. So if you can, give me just a minute. I need to set up for this a little bit because I'm going to try to demonstrate this to you here. So we want to go to tracks. Come out of that. Right. Stand by for me.
Robert, real quick, I'd just like to say thank you so much for your time and your workflow. It's really stimulating to see this, so greatly appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, I hope it stimulates you into some good sound. You know? Oh, man. Let's see here. Make sure I'm doing all this right here. All right, we'll have to have a little sound check here. Stand by. That's good. That is good. Okay. Tracks. Can you guys hear that okay?
Yes.
And will I be able to talk over that? Can you hear me over that music?
Sounds
Hello, check, check, check.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I can turn it down if I need to talk. So, all right. So here we go. All right. So let's talk about bus-fed parallel returns right now. Okay. So this is the standard guide. This is the way we've done it forever in analog, where we take a channel out an aux out to a processor, and a processor back to a channel, right? We've created a parallel path for it. And again, we don't really have to delay compensation doesn't really have to come into play here because we're going to use time-based processing in this return, right? So, the perfect example of this is drum reverb, right? Where we just take and send our drums to some sort of drum reverb and we hear it. And I'll demonstrate that for you here. So I've got that just going out to a room right now. So you can, let me get the cam up here. Okay, so here's our inputs. Remember, we're just assigned to the left right now. This is just a very simple path we're going to work with right now. And then we're going to take an auxiliary out of those inputs here. So we can see the aux now. This is the aux master. And that aux master is going to go to a processor, and we're going to return it and add it in with the drums, right? And there's as much as we want here. Now, the key to remember here is that as long as this aux is on, there's audio going to that processor. We are just turning up the return of it, okay? Everybody knows that one, right? Everybody got that guy? Yeah. All right. Now, here's the cool thing. With bus to bus and a combination of path or of insert possibilities, we can do some different stuff here, right? So this is an aux out to a channel out to an aux, and then we're just going to take that aux and assign it to whichever master bus we want it to go to, right? We're not going to take it out to a processor and return it to a channel. We're just going to insert the processing on the auxiliary and assign it wherever we need to go. Does it need to go to the drum subgroup? Does it need to go to the left, right? It depends on what tiering that you have in place with your grouping, right? So this is really cool. So now the aux send is actually working as the return, right? So I'm going to give you an example of that here. So here is I think it is. Oh, no, it's yeah. All right, so in this situation, we're sending out to this aux master, and we're going to take that aux master and assign it to the left, right. All right, so we didn't need that input fader as the return, right? Now this is a pre-fade insert on the aux. Just got it on a plate, right? So it's the same process as the return. We just eliminated an entire channel and are able to do it. Everybody getting that? Pretty cool, huh? It gets even cooler. Check this out. All right, so that's with the insert in pre-fade, right? We have a pre-fader insert there. So audio's getting to the plug-in, it's coming into the return of that aux, and then the aux is sending it back out wherever we want. That aux master is working as a return fader right there. Okay? Well, if we take and put that auxiliary or that plug-in in the post fader position, guess what? Now it acts as a send, right? So now that aux fader is the send and the return is at a fixed level. So I'm going to use some vocals to show you this because it's an easier way to do it. So let me see. Let's go. I think I need to turn on this camera for this. Yeah, here we go. So let's go here. All right, so what we're going to do here is I'm basically going to show you the same thing with vocals. I'm going to just mute this all down for a second. And let's see here. Let's go here. Oops. Right. Okay, so this is our vocal. Now this is traditional send and return. Let's re-examine that one more time. So I'm going to take an aux out of this channel, and I'm going to send it to a slap delay, and then I'm going to send it to a long delay, and I'm also going to send it to a plate. All right, so that's 3 different auxes that are going out. Matter of fact, maybe we'll do this. There we go. All right, so that's the knob module right above this, this set of faders, right? So I'm going to take this channel, and I'm going to send it out 3 auxes, as you can see here, right? So slap delay, long delay, and reverb, right? So let's see what that's like.
'cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns
Let's
me
slap.
on is when I hear a soulful
Plate.
sound. I like soul with a capital S.
And a long delay.
Soul with a capital S. Sweet soul music, that's the best. Soul with a capital S.
Stand by for me.
'Cause I got to have that funk. 'Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul.
All right, so in this situation, you know, with all these channel returns, we can feed them into each other, right? So we could take, you know, the slap return, send it to the plate. We could take the long delay return, send it to the plate, just to get all of these things kind of combined into a vocal sound, right?
'Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul
Right.
with a capital S.
Now the thing about this is, you know, when you're messing with the return for the long delay, right? There's audio going to the delay all the time, right? You're just catching the returns and trying to do it in the pocket of the song. If I want to turn audio on to the delay, maybe I just want to catch a certain word, right, and have it hang over the bar line, whatever, then I have to go up to the aux and actually turn it on and off when I need it to happen, right? And look, we've been doing it that way forever in analog, right? But digital gives us the opportunity to do that a different way if we want to do it. And it's, in my mind, it's way more effective, right? So this is the traditional setup. We're going to go to a different setup here where we're going to do this all with the auxes, okay? So we're going to eliminate these channels and do it just with the aux masters, right? So we go here now. Now I've got that input going to the 3 different auxes, right? Slap, long delay, and plate, right? And here are those aux masters right here. So this is the slap delay, and the slap delay processor is inserted on that aux master, right? Here's the long delay. Again, right now it's inserted on that master. And the plate, again, the plugin is inserted on that master, right? So we're just going to assign these to the same bus that we assign the vocals to in terms of master, right? And you'll see, hopefully.
'Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing
So slap.
that turns me on
Plate,
is when I hear a soulful
and delay.
sound. I like soul with a capital S.
Okay, so we can do that.
Soul with a capital S.
I'm going to exaggerate it just so you can hear it.
Music, that's the best. Soul with a capital S.
All right, so, you know, really, I mean, this can work just as good as the returns. Matter of fact, it works exactly like the returns now that we can do bus to bus. Because remember, the key to this is that we're taking an aux master and we're sending it up to other aux masters, right? And we're just assigning these in their kind of path to the left-right bus or whatever your vocal master bus is. So this works exactly the same as the traditional way of doing it with 3 less channels, right? So you gain 3 entire processing channels as a result of this. And there's actually a way that this actually works a little better than the other. So let's go to that situation where we want to turn on specific words. Well, in that situation, we're actually going to take this long delay channel and we're going to make the insert post fader on the long delay. Okay? So in that situation, let me get it all dialed back up here. So I've got it set up here where if I press the color chiclet, it actually moves that plug-in to the post position. So now this is a post insert delay. All right.
'Cause I got to have that funk.
So we've got our plate and a reverb still happening. Notice if I turn up the,
is when I hear a soulful sound.
my bad.
I like soul with a capital S.
So there's no audio going to the plug-in now unless the fader is up.
Sweet soul music,
Right?
that's the best.
And what that allows us to do is actually send specific words if we want to do it.
'Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul with
Right? So just the word song went to the delays there.
So, with a capital S, sweet soul music.
Maybe another
that's
word, huh?
the best. So, with a capital S.
Now, the cool thing about, I mean, that's one of the great things about S6L to be able to do this. So I can pick and choose whether I want it to work as a return or as a send at any point. I'll do it on the next pass.
I like soul with a capital S. Soul with a capital S.
So I'm going to start with it as a send and then switch it over to a return.
Soul with a capital S. Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul with a capital S.
And I'm going to go back to pre now. It's going to work as the return
With a
now.
capital S. Sweet soul music, that's the best. Soul with a capital S.
Right, so there's two different modes using the same fader. I mean, it works really, really good. I mean, it's cool. You know, it's actually more functional than the input way of doing it, right? And you can build as many composites of that by sending aux masters to other aux masters as you want to do, right? Is that making sense to you guys there? Seem pretty cool?
But in that case, if you did your throw, and let's say your singer belted out that line louder than you've expected, once that throw's been set, if all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that's got to come down, you have no control of that return level. Or am I thinking wrong?
Well, you actually have, I mean, yeah, if you're setting it based on something that she's done before, yeah, then it's going to be louder, right? That send level is going to be louder because of her, not because of you. And it's going to return louder. Yeah, no doubt about it.
But I mean, you can't, if you drop that fader down, you're just you're dropping the level of the send in.
Yeah,
but if
the
you want
process
to
has
drop
already
the
happened.
level of the delay, you have no fader control of the of how loud that delay is as it's repeating.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you see that, I can tell you see that as a negative, and it's okay. I get it. But, you know, you still have to react to it. You know, I mean, you just don't have a way to react there.
Yep.
So, I mean, in that case, if you're worried about that, go back to a traditional path.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I know what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about mult here. How do we handle a mult in this situation? How do I get a vocal per se? This is common for me. I love doing this on vocals, is being able to add an element of mid-range distortion to a vocal to get it to pop and jump a little bit. And I use things like SansAmp to do this all the time. I'm going to do it here for you. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and we'll talk about this. If I can remember how to do that. There we go. All right, so the last one is coming up with a mult. And again, this is going to be where you know, this kind of bus to bus helps you. Oh, I'm sorry, got my little automation there. All right, so in a mult, what we want to do is have a duplicate that is of an input source that is post fader of that input source. Have it be in phase and be able to add distortion to it. Okay, so as you can see, what it requires is a concept called a bridge channel, right, where we take the source channel, which is the one on the far left there, and we go out a direct output. You can even do this out in aux too if you wanted to add multiple inputs to this. Right now, I'm just going to set it up off of a direct output. Right, so we're going to go direct output, and we're going to go to 2 plugins. All right. Now, the one plugin on the top obviously is the distortion processor we're going to use. The second one is just a raw plugin. I use something like time adjuster. It's just a way to create a bridge to this path, right? And we're going to bring it to what we're going to call the bridge channel. That center channel is the bridge channel. So the idea here is that we're going to have 2 returns, and that main channel is not going to be assigned anywhere, right? It's just the path to these 2 channels. All right, so if that's your main input, I mean, obviously you still have preamp control, et cetera there. You can even do equalization and dynamics if you want to do it there. But you don't want to send from the aux on that first channel. you want to send that from the bridge channel, because you're going to use this bridge channel to align these two paths. Once this is done, the bridge channel and the affected channel are going to go to your master bus, whether it's a vocal master subgroup or a left-right subgroup, whatever, or left-right submaster, grandmaster, excuse me. That's what you're going to send it, okay? But the idea is those right two channels need to be combined into your vocal sound and sent out. The left channel is not assigned anywhere. It's just the source of the audio, okay?
Right. So one's a clean and one's the affected.
Yeah, one's clean delayed and the other is affected. Yes, that's right. Okay, so I've got that set up here and I'll give you a little sense of what that sounds like. And the same sort of idea, right? We're going to take audio from the clean channel and the affected channel and send them both to the effects, right? We don't want our effects to just have one or the other. I mean, unless you implicitly want to do that, right? So let's see here. So let's go back to our vocal.
Cause I got to have that funk.
Sure, I'm on the right.
The only thing that turns me on.
And that's here. Oops. Right. Okay, so let me get the camera back up there. Okay, so you can see right now that the vocal is up, but we don't hear it, right? So it's not assigned to any master bus. But as we turn them on, there is the clean channel. There's the distorted channel.
I like so.
And we're going to add those two things together.
Capitalist. So, with a capitalist. Sweet soul music. That's the best.
With distortion.
So, with a capitalist. Cause I got to have that funk.
So here's our slide.
The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul with a capitalist. Soul with a capitalist.
Oops.
Soul music, that's the best. Soul with a capitalist. Cause I got to have that funk. The only thing that turns me on is when I hear a soulful sound. I like soul with a capitalist. Soul with a capitalist. Sweet soul music, that's the best. Soul with a capitalist.
Kind of get the idea there? So, you know, I mean, doing mults is a really cool thing if you can, but it's all about getting the two signals in phase and keeping them there, right? That's the whole goal or the whole challenge of the whole thing, especially in digital. It's very easy to do in analog, but that is a good, solid challenge in digital for sure. Making sense? Sound like something you want to try? I see some nodding heads. Pavan says yes.
No, that's totally a great way. I distort drums a lot, and distortion can use up a lot of latency.
Yeah.
And getting that to line up with your clean drums, if you just do it as a parallel group, is
and
not fun.
Yeah,
But
and where it can
using this
start to mess with you is it starts to push the drums out of time with the bass, etc.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I mean. It can tumble downhill pretty quickly. You got to, don't do this and not respect it. It can get out of hand really, really quick if you're not careful. And it's one of those things. I believe you can't just keep turning knobs till it sounds right. It's never going to sound right out of phase. So, Gear, you have your hand up there. Sorry, I see it now.
Yes, I was just wondering, you are using a plugin for the delay compensation. Why not use the function on the channel itself, on the bridge channel?
I actually do use the channel function to do it. I only use the plugin to create the path, right? So I'll take you there, Stan.
Okay, yeah. Next question. Why do you have to use the bridge channel? Why can't you just use the original input channel?
Because
And
the more
send
you
that to
delay
the
it,
master.
the more the return will delay. Because it's post fader.
Oh, so the delay is before. All right. Hmm.
Want to go back to the path?
Yeah.
Let's look at this. Too many buttons.
That's what I was mentioning about the drum, doing the distortion on the drums. If I try to align the drums to the distortion by doing it on the channels, which is sending it to the distortion, it just makes the
No,
distortion
you can't do
also
it.
later. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
If you try to delay this channel, you're also delaying this, right? Can you guys see my mouse there?
But isn't that? I mean, I thought the delay thingy processor was after, because I thought you were picking the signal off from just after the preamp, and then the delay, the latency compensation was later in the channel stream.
No.
No.
I want this. Actually want the distortion, everything to be post fader. This.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that if I mute this, the channel goes dead, right? I mean, you know, you want to do it.
If I'm understanding you correctly, I think you're getting hung up on the particular plugin that he used. It's just a placeholder to keep the clear path time aligned with his dirty path.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this could be any plugin in bypass. It's just there to create this path in the effects rack.
Yes, no, so I got that.
Yeah.
I got that. So I just wanted to know why you didn't. So I got that. So you do the delay compensation on the bridge. So the next question was why at all the bridge channel, and the answer to that is that the delay compensation is before the pickup point or the send out point.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
And the second reason is I'm going to take the summation of this and send it to auxes to the effects, right? So
Yeah.
I they have to be in time if I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And they wouldn't be here. And that this is ultimately the challenge of multing in digital, is that the source channel will always cause the return channel to be later. I can keep adding delay on the source channel all day long, and the return is just going to continue to get later with it, right?
Yep.
And just to make sure everybody's on the same line of thinking as you there, Gear, if we were to take this direct output pre-fader, then yes, you could do it, but then you lose the post-fader ability of the whole process. Now really, in that situation, you probably wouldn't even put the source channel up where you're mixing on it. You would just mix off the bridge channel, right?
Yep.
Off of both channels, really,
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So juicy stuff, right? I mean, boy, a lot going on, or a lot can go on here with this stuff. But it's pretty cool. Once you kind of get your head wrapped around the time element and you can get that under control, man, you can create some pretty astonishing mixes with this technology, I'm telling you.
Provided you have a console that has that many buses to work with.
Yeah, well, I mean, we used to have this conversation when we were developing for S6L. It's like, well, how many subgroups is enough subgroups, and how many auxes is enough auxes? And my take on it, which was singular in the room, I was the only guy standing up to say this, is like, we don't even know how they're going to use them yet. You got to take like the Apple approach there. We need to design things for them that they don't even know they need yet. And when you have, 96 auxes or 48 subgroups available to you, these are the ways you can eat them up pretty rapidly. You go back to that 4-tier grouping. I mean, that's using up a ton of groups right there just to be able to create that process. So, do we have enough now? We probably don't. There's probably going to be a way to get around it.
Well, my point is you're not going to do it on a Behringer. Sorry.
No. And I would be very upset if you could. No, it's definitely an architecture thing. I mean, you're kind of getting what you pay for here.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll leave it open for questions, but I'm going to start my little wrap up here because we're getting close to the 90-minute mark here. So just a couple of things to think about now between now and the next time we meet for this lab again is where would you do your insert processing? Would you do it on inputs, input groups, drum submasters, input group masters, grandmaster? The answer is you can do it anywhere you want to do it. It's just a matter of being able to elegantly manage gain structure and path length, right? I mean, that is what it's all down to. And I don't want to sell it as if it's easy to do. Now, because the place where this really goes haywire is when you start to parallel compress, right? If I'm going to parallel compress a drum submaster, what happens when I put that second group there? If I'm going to, maybe I want to do what's commonly referred to in these days as P-bus, right? Where I'm going to take that instrument group and I'm going to parallel compress that instrument group master. Well, how do I do that? What's the time ramifications of that? How do we do that and keep it all in phase? Not to put on the Avid hat too much here, but one of the great things that we put into the console in Venue 7 was the ability to, at least with compression, not doing New York style compression, but just compression alone, be able to parallel compress at every stage of this on the channel without having to use an external processor. So every one of these paths, meaning the input path, the input group, the tier 2 submaster, the tier 3 input group master, and the main left-right, have the ability to insert a compressor there on board and create 50-50 parallel there if you want to do it, or any 10, 90, 70, 30 parallel at any path there if you want to do it. So it's just an incredible feature to go along with this group-to-group path, where you're not creating an actual parallel path. You're just saying, I want my left-right mix to be 70% dry signal and 30% compression, right? You can do that right on the console. Just turn it on and set the settings and go.
So every compressor has a blend. Is that what you're saying, Robert?
Yeah, every compressor, every gate, every equalizer has a blender.
Okay.
And I'll show it to you here just to finish this out here. Here, that's the button to push.
Can you put that blender on a large fader?
No.
Ah.
I don't
Then I
know
don't
why
like it.
I would ride it, but yeah, I'm sure you have a reason. All right, so here's an input. We can just set a compressor and just do 50-50 if we want to do it. You might be able to do something like that in events. I don't think so at the moment, though. So that's an input that is being 50-50 compressed. Here we can go to a subgroup. Let's go. That's an input group. We can do 50-50 compression there if we want to do it. We can go to our drum submaster, 50-50 there, and then we can go up to our instrument master, 50-50 there. Go to the main left-right. This is obviously crazy. It's just meant to show it. So,
but this is not on a. So this is not on a pot, Robert. This is you have to punch it. You have to type it in.
That's not on a pot. No, I mean you can sit and move it with the mouse if you want to blend it and just get a sense of it. But it's not on a pot. No.
Okay.
Because I ride that on the main vocal. I would ride that depending on what I want from the band and everything.
Then I would put it on a fader. I would
yeah.
Put it on a fader.
But then you couldn't do it on the insert or on the one in the channel like that. You can use that processor in the channel.
Not as a true parallel return. No.
No. Yeah.
You have to use an external processor for that.
Yeah.
So Denis, here is this is me doing it with a knob. There is a knob on the actual channel to allow you to blend it. Where are you? You didn't go away, did you? Oh, there he is. Sorry. You see it there? So I'm actually doing it with. Let's see here. Yeah, I can't show that here. Let's see if I can do this. So you can see that's the mix knob. And
so this is me turning it. Groovy. So I lied. There is a knob for it, but not a fader. Alrighty. That's enough, don't you think? Man.
Now, Robert,
Yes.
would the option of I don't know, so I'm guessing here. Would the option of using the flip on the knob turn it down to the fader so that Gear could do it that way?
Possibly. Actually, it would depend on where you're doing it. Let me try something here. Let me see here. Let's go here. It would take a while to get to it. And no, flip will not work for that. It doesn't flip that function down.
It was a guess.
It was a good try. I was able to. I was willing to go for that. Sure, man.
It's an ad for version 9.
Honestly, I think the best way to do it would just be add it to the events list and give you the ability to assign a fader to it if you wanted to do it. Interesting idea for sure. But keep in mind, it wouldn't be a processing channel. It would just be fader control, right? It wouldn't be like you could EQ it as well. I mean, that would be a nice way to do it, but that's not what's going to happen there. You're just going to get control of that knob. Could also do it on touch and turn up on the console. You know, you could just touch the parameter and put it on the little knob. But if you're gonna go through the process of creating quote unquote New York style parallel compression, which is a complete parallel path, EQ, compression, tape saturation, etc., then yeah, put it on a channel. Do it as a a bridge channel and get it going that way. Okay, so how we doing? Everybody okay? I know this is a lot. Hope you got something out of that. Hope you enjoyed the return to the lab. I know I enjoyed putting it together. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. The next one will be on all of these parallel compression concepts, and we'll probably dig a little deeper into automatic delay compensation and manual delay compensation because we will be forced to. And then after that, we're going to get in some more specific workflow stuff. I think I'm going to probably do mixing front of house and monitors using bus-to-bus. Maybe mixing just monitors, bus-to-bus, because there's a lot of possibilities there as well. Hopefully I can get that in one lab, but if not, we'll just split it up across two. I got nowhere to go right now. All right. So with that, I'll tell you guys, we'll see y'all later. Maybe I'll see you in the back lounge on Friday, and we'll catch up with you then. The recording will post hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow, but it should get up pretty quick if everything goes all right with the recording here, okay? All right, guys, thanks a ton. We'll see you later.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Robert.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Goodbye. Good night.
Good night, Gear. See ya.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert.